Buckle up, folks, because today we're diving into the thrilling tales of the infamous Queen Jezebel. Often painted as the embodiment of wickedness, this queen's story is as captivating as it's controversial. But there's more to Jezebel than just the notorious reputation. From her political shrewdness to her unwavering commitment to her beliefs, there's a wealth of attributes that make her a truly fascinating character. A foreign idol worshipper who dared to challenge the status quo, or a misunderstood queen just doing her best to navigate the tricky world of politics. Stick around as we unravel the enigmatic life of this queen who was much more than just a villain. Jezebel wasn't just a queen, she was a power player in the Game of Thrones. Now let's talk about her royal matchup. Her marriage to King Ahab wasn't a fairy tale love story, but rather a strategic move on the chessboard of power politics. You see, this union was more than just a marriage. It was a political alliance that served to strengthen the bonds between their respective kingdoms. Jezebel was no damsel in distress waiting for her prince. She was a queen who knew her worth and used it to her advantage. This marriage provided military protection for her homeland and opened up trade routes. A win-win deal if you ask me. But this wasn't a simple case of, you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. Jezebel brought her own flavor to the mix, introducing her gods and goddesses, particularly Baal and Asherah, to Israel. This act, while frowned upon by some, showcased her strength and individuality, making her a force to be reckoned with. So it wasn't all about love and roses, but more about thrones and alliances. Jezebel was a woman of strong conviction, and boy did she know how to stir the pot. A foreign queen, she brought with her a wealth of traditions and beliefs that were entirely her own. And chief among these was her devotion to the gods of her homeland, Baal and Asherah. Now this might not seem like a big deal today, but back in the time of the kings this was a huge no-no. Israel was a land that believed in the worship of one God, Yahweh, and they were pretty strict about it too. So, when Jezebel came along promoting the worship of Baal, it was as though she had thrown a cat among the pigeons. She wasn't just quietly practicing her faith in private, oh no. She was building temples, erecting statues, and even had prophets of Baal dining at her table. This was more than a simple matter of personal belief. This was a challenge to the very fabric of Israel's religious norms and traditions. And it wasn't just the common folk who were ruffled. King Ahab, her husband, was known to tolerate Baal worship, largely thanks to Jezebel's influence. This made her the target of the Deuteronomist, a group of religious scribes who saw her as the embodiment of everything that needed to be purged from Israel to maintain the purity of Yahweh worship. But despite the backlash, the criticism, and the outright hostility, Jezebel didn't back down. She continued to promote her faith, standing her ground in the face of overwhelming opposition. She was unapologetically herself, a woman of deep conviction, fiercely loyal to her gods, and unafraid to challenge the status quo. Love her or hate her, Jezebel stood her ground and defended her beliefs, even when it meant going against the tide. One thing's for sure, Jezebel was no pushover. Now let's talk about the strength of Jezebel. This woman was a force to be reckoned with, a queen who was unafraid to challenge the status quo and assert her power. Jezebel was a woman of resilience. Despite being a foreigner in a strange land, she never let that deter her. She held fast to her beliefs, even when they were in stark contrast to the prevailing religious practices in Israel. And then there's her determination. Jezebel was not one to back down from a fight. When she set her sights on something, she would stop at nothing to achieve it. This tenacity, this unyielding spirit, is a testament to her strength of character. But perhaps Jezebel's greatest strength was her political savvy. As queen, she wielded significant influence, steering the direction of King Ahab's reign. She knew how to navigate the tricky waters of palace politics, using her influence to protect her interests and those of her homeland. And let's not forget, Jezebel was a woman navigating a man's world. She was playing the Game of Thrones before it was cool, and doing it with a level of skill and cunning that would make even the most seasoned politicians blush. In a world where women were often sidelined, Jezebel was front and center, making decisions, and leaving a lasting impact on the history of Israel. In a man's world, Jezebel was a woman who held her own and left a mark to be remembered. Jezebel's story isn't just an ancient tale, it's packed with lessons for our times. Often, history is a mirror that reflects our present, and Jezebel's narrative is no exception. Let's start with religious tolerance. Jezebel was a foreign queen who brought her own beliefs into a new land. She was vilified for promoting the worship of her gods, a clear case of religious intolerance. In today's world, we still grapple with accepting differing beliefs and practices. Jezebel's story serves as a reminder that diversity, including religious diversity, should be embraced, not feared or rejected. Now let's talk about women's empowerment. Jezebel, a queen in a male-dominated society, held her ground and made her mark. She was a leader, a decision-maker, and dare we say, a bit of a rebel. Today we continue to fight for gender equality and women's rights. Jezebel's story embodies the spirit of resilience and defiance against societal norms that women all around the world can draw strength from. Finally, the challenges of leadership. Reigning alongside King Ahab, Jezebel's rule was fraught with controversy and conflict. Leadership, as we know, is not a walk in the park, and it certainly wasn't for Jezebel. Her story underscores the trials of leading, the scrutiny leaders face, and the courage it takes to make unpopular decisions. So the next time you hear the name Jezebel, remember, she's not just a villain from a story, but a queen who dared to be different. Her legacy is not merely one of wickedness, but one that imparts lessons on religious tolerance, women's empowerment, and the complexities of leadership. And those are lessons worth remembering. As we pull the curtains on the tale of Queen Jezebel, let's remember her for all her facets, not just the ones that made headlines. This enigmatic queen, often painted in dark hues, was more than just a controversial monarch. She was a woman of conviction, unyielding in her beliefs, and a formidable force in King Ahab's reign. Her strength and resilience, her unwavering devotion to her deities, and her political savvy, all make her a figure worth studying. Jezebel may have been a queen from a different era, but her story continues to intrigue, inspire, and teach us even today. So here's to Queen Jezebel, a woman of conviction and character. Before we wrap up this intriguing tale, we have a little request for our esteemed audience. If you enjoyed journeying through history with us today, please do consider giving us a thumbs up. Your likes help us reach more history enthusiasts like you. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and family who might be intrigued by the story of Queen Jezebel. We'd also love to hear from you in the comments section. What are your thoughts on Queen Jezebel? Do you see her as a villain or a misunderstood monarch? And if there are any other historical figures or events you'd like us to explore, feel free to drop your suggestions. Lastly, please hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to stay updated on our future journeys into the past. Thank you for joining us on this historical journey. Remember, history is not just about dates and events, it's about understanding the human condition. So stay curious, stay informed, and keep exploring the fascinating world of history with us.